What if the US does not come to Guyana's aid? In the realm of international politics, few situations are as volatile and complex as territorial disputes. The impending referendum in Venezuela, set for December 3, 2023, over the annexation of Guyana's Essequibo region, is a testament to this complexity. This event is not just a regional issue, it's a microcosm of the larger dynamics at play in global geopolitics. The Guyanese government's seemingly passive response, marked by patriotic songs and social media campaigns, juxtaposed with the strategic absence of its president and vice president, raises questions about the efficacy of such tactics in the face of potential military conflict. Its timing suggests a possible contingency plan. By being abroad, the leadership may be positioning itself to govern from exile or to avoid direct involvement should the situation escalate following the referendum. This strategy might be seen as a pragmatic move, ensuring the continuity of government in a worst-case scenario. However, it also raises questions about the confidence of the Guyanese leadership in their ability to handle the situation and their commitment to defending the nation's sovereignty on the ground. Some may see this strategy as a move of cowardice to gauge the Venezuelan military buildup and decide whether or not to return to Guyana. What could be so important that you leave your people during a time of almost imminent war? Either way, it does not give any assurance to a people who might soon be at war and has a level of cowardice to it. Moreover, the waning enthusiasm of the United States to intervene in international disputes, as evidenced in recent situations like Myanmar, adds another layer of uncertainty. Understanding the gravity and implications of this situation is essential, as it could redefine the geopolitical landscape of South America and beyond. The Venezuelan referendum and Guyanese response. The decision by Venezuela to hold a referendum on the annexation of the Essequibo region is not only a bold political maneuver but also a significant test of international law and regional stability. This move, though primarily driven by nationalistic aspirations, is deeply intertwined with Venezuela's internal politics and its tumultuous economic situation. The Maduro government, facing international isolation and economic sanctions, sees the Essequibo issue as a way to rally domestic support and project strength on the international stage. The referendum's implications extend far beyond the immediate territorial dispute. It challenges the established norms of international relations and the respect for territorial sovereignty. If successful, it could set a dangerous precedent for resolving territorial disputes, encouraging other nations to pursue similar unilateral actions. This prospect raises alarm bells for the international community, particularly for countries dealing with their own territorial disputes. Moreover, the referendum is a litmus test for regional alliances and the efficacy of international organizations like the United Nations and the Organization of American States. The response of these bodies to the referendum will be closely watched, as it will indicate the robustness of international mechanisms in upholding global norms and mediating disputes. In stark contrast to Venezuela's aggressive posture, Guyana's response has been markedly unconventional. Instead of ramping up military preparations or engaging in diplomatic offensives, Guyana has turned to cultural and digital platforms to assert its sovereignty. Patriotic songs and social media campaigns have become the tools of choice, aiming to unite the nation and garner international sympathy. This approach, while unique, underscores Guyana's limited resources and its reliance on soft power. However, this strategy has its limitations. In the face of potential military aggression, cultural expressions and online campaigns may not be sufficient to defend the nation's territorial integrity. Guyana's approach also reflects a broader strategy of seeking international support and mediation rather than direct confrontation, hoping that global pressure will dissuade Venezuela from any aggressive actions. The timing of the Guyanese president and vice president's trip to Dubai, just before the referendum, is an intriguing aspect of this saga. Officially, this visit is aimed at fostering economic and diplomatic ties, but its timing suggests a possible contingency plan. Role of the United States and international dynamics. In the backdrop of this geopolitical turmoil is the United States grappling with high inflation, a challenge that has intensified the need to secure stable and affordable energy sources. The U.S. decision to ease some sanctions on Venezuela can be seen as a strategic move to reopen oil trade channels, potentially alleviating domestic economic pressures. Venezuelan oil, with its significant reserves, offers a promising solution to help mitigate the effects of inflation by diversifying and stabilizing the U.S. oil supply. This economic motivation could significantly influence the U.S. stance on the Essequibo dispute. While the U.S. traditionally advocates for democratic principles and respect for international law, the urgent need to address domestic economic issues might lead to a more pragmatic approach towards Venezuela. This scenario poses a delicate diplomatic challenge, balancing the immediate economic needs against the long-term principles of foreign policy. The situation in Myanmar presents a pertinent parallel to the Essequibo crisis, offering insights into the current U.S. foreign policy approach. Despite the humanitarian crisis and global calls for intervention in Myanmar, the U.S. response has been restrained, focusing on sanctions and diplomatic pressure rather than military involvement. This approach reflects a broader strategy of avoiding direct intervention in international conflicts, particularly when they do not pose a direct threat to national security or strategic interests. This precedent is telling in the context of the Essequibo dispute. It suggests that the U.S. might adopt a similar stance of limited involvement, preferring diplomatic and economic measures over military action. This approach aligns with a broader trend in U.S. foreign policy, where the emphasis is on managing international conflicts through non-military means. The U.S.'s recent history in international conflicts supports this trend of limited intervention. In situations like the Syrian civil war and the Ukraine crisis, the U.S. has shown a preference for sanctions, diplomatic negotiations, and support to allies rather than direct military engagement. This pattern indicates a strategic shift in U.S. foreign policy, moving away from the role of a global policeman to a more measured actor on the international stage. This shift is likely influenced by the experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, where prolonged military engagements have led to significant costs without achieving the desired stability. The American public's wariness of overseas military commitments also plays a role in shaping this policy. The U.S. response to the Essequibo dispute, influenced by the need for Venezuelan oil amidst high inflation, represents a complex balancing act between economic pragmatism and foreign policy principles. The examples of Myanmar and other international conflicts suggest a U.S. approach that favors diplomacy and economic measures over military intervention. How the U.S. navigates this situation will have significant implications not only for the immediate crisis but also for the broader international order and the U.S.'s role in it. The Essequibo dispute thus stands as a critical test of contemporary U.S. foreign policy in a world where economic needs, strategic interests, and ethical principles are increasingly intertwined. An invasion by Venezuela would likely lead to increased instability in the region. Neighboring countries, such as Brazil and Colombia, might feel compelled to respond, either diplomatically or militarily, to prevent a precedent of territorial aggression. This could lead to heightened tensions in South America, with potential for broader regional conflicts. Venezuela would likely face widespread international condemnation for such an aggressive act. Sanctions and diplomatic isolation could be intensified by the international community, further damaging the Venezuelan economy and its global standing. This could exacerbate the already challenging humanitarian and economic situation within Venezuela. In response to international condemnation and isolation, Venezuela might seek closer ties with nations like Russia, China, or Iran, which could be willing to offer support against Western sanctions. This would align with these countries' broader strategic interests in countering Western influence and gaining a foothold in South America. The immediate human cost of such an invasion would be significant. It could lead to loss of life, displacement of populations, and a humanitarian crisis in the region. The people of Guyana, especially those in the contested Essequibo region, would be most affected, facing potential human rights violations and disruption of their lives. A successful territorial acquisition by force, without significant international intervention, could weaken the norms of international law, particularly regarding state sovereignty and territorial integrity. This could set a dangerous precedent, encouraging other states with territorial disputes to consider similar aggressive actions. Without U.S. or other major powers' intervention, Guyana might have limited options to resist the invasion effectively, given its smaller military and economic capabilities. Guyana would likely turn to international bodies like the United Nations or the International Court of Justice, but these avenues might offer limited immediate relief. The conflict could disrupt the region's economy, affecting trade and investment. Guyana's recent developments in oil exploration and production might be particularly impacted, which would have long-term economic implications for the country. Conclusion. The Essequibo dispute, set against the backdrop of the Venezuelan referendum and the shifting dynamics of U.S. foreign policy, presents a complex and multifaceted challenge. It encapsulates the intricacies of historical territorial disputes, the impact of nationalistic policies, and the evolving role of major powers in regional conflicts. The outcome of this situation will not only determine the fate of the Essequibo region but also set a precedent for how similar disputes are addressed in the future. A Venezuelan invasion of Guyana without U.S. intervention would likely lead to regional instability, international condemnation of Venezuela, a humanitarian crisis, and a weakening of international norms. It would also potentially shift geopolitical alliances in the region, with significant implications for the balance of power in South America. The situation would be a stark reminder of the complexities of international relations in a world where traditional power structures and norms are increasingly challenged. Check out these other videos we made on this topic. Until next time, take care.